I came across this story, and I was struck by the layers of complexity woven throughout, the kind that makes you pause and reconsider what family obligation really means. Let me share it with you, because this is the kind of narrative that deserves to be heard. This story centers on a woman, let's call her Sarah, who at 23 years old made a decision that would shape the next decade of her life. She bought her first house, $80,000 down, a mortgage stretching ahead of her, and she invited her mother to live with her. Now, notice the structure of this arrangement from the beginning. Sarah owned the house, fully, legally, her name on the deed. Her mother contributed $300 weekly toward the mortgage while they lived together, not rent to a landlord, not building equity of her own, but helping her daughter with the costs of a home that Sarah had purchased. This detail matters more than you might think. For 4 years, they lived this way, mother and daughter sharing a space, sharing expenses. Then Sarah's life shifted, as lives do. She moved out at 27 with her husband, started a family, 3 children, and the arrangement evolved. Here's where the pattern begins to reveal itself. When Sarah moved out, her mother's contribution increased to $450 weekly. Sarah covered the remainder of the mortgage, along with property taxes and all maintenance costs. Her mother was paying well below market rate. A house 2 doors down was renting for $650 weekly. But this wasn't a landlord-tenant relationship. This was a daughter providing her mother with affordable housing in a home she owned. Years pass, over $200,000 invested by Sarah into this property. Mortgage payments, taxes, repairs, improvements. And then, the narrative takes its inevitable turn. Sarah's mother passes away. This is the moment where we understand what grief can reveal about family dynamics, about what people believe they are owed, about how money transforms relationships. Sarah's 2 older sisters, 38 and 40, come forward with a claim. They want the house split 3 ways. Their reasoning: their mother lived there. Their mother paid into it. Therefore, they're entitled to a share. Notice the logic they are constructing here. They're framing their mother's below-market rent payments as investment, as equity building, as ownership. They're reshaping the narrative of what actually happened. A daughter providing housing for her mother into something else entirely. And here's what makes this moment so revealing. They point to Sarah's other house, the one she lives in with her husband and children, and they say, "You already have everything. You don't need this one too." The implication sits heavy in that statement. The suggestion that Sarah's financial stability, built through her own decisions, her own investments, her own decade-plus of mortgage payments, somehow obligates her to share what she's built. Sarah says no, she doesn't want to rent the house out. The thought of strangers in her mother's space hurts her. And beyond the emotional weight, there's the practical reality. Her sisters couldn't afford the mortgage and their own bills. But her sisters persist. They call her selfish. They calculate the property appreciation, how house prices have climbed significantly, and they see money they believe should be theirs. Notice what's happening in their argument. They're not acknowledging Sarah's $80,000 deposit. They're not crediting the $200,000 she's invested over 12 years. They're not considering that she paid property taxes and maintenance while their mother paid reduced rent. They're focused solely on what they feel they deserve. Sarah, trying to find middle ground, trying to honor her mother's contributions, offers each sister $5,000. This is all she can spare after covering most of their mother's funeral costs and headstone. She's already buried her mother and paid for it largely alone. And now she's offering what she can. Her sisters say it's not enough. The arguing continues. Then, and this is where the story takes a turn that reveals just how far entitlement can stretch. The middle sister calls again. She says Sarah is being greedy, and she adds something new to her claim. Her daughter, Sarah's niece, should get a share too. Think about the narrative construction here. The sisters themselves contributed nothing to this house. Their mother paid below-market rent while Sarah carried the mortgage, the taxes, the repairs. And now one sister is arguing that her daughter, who has zero connection to the property's history, deserves a percentage of its value. Sarah loves her niece. She says so explicitly. The girl is special to her. She's welcome to stay at either of Sarah's homes anytime. But welcoming her and giving her ownership of property she never contributed to, these are entirely different things. Sarah holds firm. She says no, and she adds a boundary. Stop calling about this, or you won't be welcome at my house. Her reasoning is worth noting. She doesn't want her children hearing their mother and aunt arguing. She doesn't want her niece exposed to this conflict. Even in the middle of defending what's rightfully hers, she's thinking about protecting the children from adult dysfunction. The sister's response: "That's fine, because I wouldn't want to visit someone so greedy anyway." And there it is, the word that keeps appearing in their arguments, greedy, applied to the woman who provided her mother with affordable housing for over 8 years, who invested over $200,000 of her own money, who paid for her mother's funeral, who offered what money she could spare to her sisters. Greedy. The story unfolds further into the comments, where Sarah clarifies the details people are questioning. The house is solely in her name, always has been. No arrangement was ever made promising her sisters anything. Her mother paid well below market rent. Every legal, financial, and ethical measure points to the same conclusion. This is Sarah's house, but her sisters see it differently. They've constructed a narrative where their mother's rent payments equal ownership, where Sarah's financial success obligates her to share, where their own lack of investment somehow still entitles them to benefit. This is the moment where perception and reality diverge completely. Sarah sees a house she bought, paid for, and maintained while generously housing her mother. Her sisters see an inheritance they're being denied. Neither perspective will likely change. What strikes me most about this narrative is how it illustrates the way grief and money intersect in families. How loss can reveal fault lines that were always there, just waiting for the right pressure. How people can genuinely believe they are entitled to something they never built, never paid for, never legally owned, simply because they feel it should be theirs. Sarah keeps saying she always thought of it as her mother's house, even though it was legally hers. That emotional truth, that generosity of perspective, is exactly what her sisters are now weaponizing against her. And that's how a story transforms understanding, by showing us that sometimes the people who give the most are the ones accused of keeping too much. That fairness and family don't always align the way we hope they will. That you can do everything right, invest your money, provide for your mother, offer what you can spare, and still be called greedy by people who contributed nothing. Stories like this remind us why we examine them in the first place, because they honor the complexity of being human, the weight of doing right when others insist you're doing wrong, and the strength it takes to hold your ground when family demands you give it up. If this story resonated with you, if you faced something similar, or if you just appreciate narratives that make us think, let me know in the comments. Subscribe if you want more stories that matter. And remember, sometimes the right choice is the one that protects what you've built, even when others call it selfishness. Title suggestions primary: I bought a house for my mother, now my sisters want half. Alt 1, my sisters think they deserve my house because our mother lived there. Alt 2, I paid $200K for this house. My sisters paid nothing, they want it split 3 ways. Alt 3, after mom died, my sisters called me greedy for keeping the house I bought.